Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I am pretty good, so how are you?
I'm all right, yes. I thoroughly enjoyed rewatching this film. It's been a long time since I watched this film.
Good.
And, if you saw the title, you know what it is. It is The Duellists, directed by Ridley Scott.
Yeah, it's his first movie.
It's a very impressive first movie.
It really is, isn't it? He was one of those. So they called him the Renaissance of British directors. So it was a group of them, including Scott's brother, who basically they come up making adverts. And so at this point, Ridley Scott had made well over 1,000 adverts. It's
interesting in the same way that although on a lower budget when it comes to Jackson's stuff, in the same way that you can see with Peter Jackson's early work, even with like Bad Taste, you can see his directing style in there. Some of it's very over ambitious for the budget, some of his shots, but you can see his directing talent in there, or at least the seeds of it.
It's certainly his visual flair.
Yes, absolutely, and with the Duellists, you absolutely can with Ridley Scott. There are some fantastic shots in this film, particularly. I'm assuming this wasn't a massive budget. I don't actually know what the budget was.
I don't think it was. No, I did have it written down.
But yeah, of course, starring Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel.
Which is one of those tried. It used to be one of those formulas that they used to get for British movies, isn't it? Because this is a British movie.
Yeah.
And basically, it's British movie. We need American stars.
Yeah.
So they basically went because he wanted Michael York for Dubert.
That would have worked. I could see that.
Yep, and he wanted Oliver Reed for Thoreau.
Okay. I mean, again, I could see that working. Yeah.
I'd really like to see what Oliver Reed would have done with Thoreau.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
But obviously, they wanted American, so apparently they gave him 4 names. I don't know what the other 2 names were, but those were the 2 names that he chose.
Right.
And then he had to go and convince them.
Yeah, I imagine so. A first-time director. Both pretty well-established actors at this point. So, But he did, and the result was The Duellists from 1977, based on a story by Joseph Conrad. I have not read the story.
A while ago, but I have,
Was it very different?
It's a bit different,
yeah. Yeah, okay.
But then, these things usually are.
They tend to be.
They basically just simplified it,
Sure, yeah.
And it was a real, actual thing. There was these two soldiers during the Napoleonic era who, over the course of, I think it was like 30 years,
had numerous duels and
20 years or something like that. They fought 30 duels, apparently.
Jesus.
Yeah. Apparently they were a lot more cordial in real life. They were sort of more friendly about it.
Right.
But I think by the end of it, they had one of them, the sort of the Dubert sort of guy, basically had enough.
Right.
So in the same way as this chose pistols, and
yeah,
more or less the same outcome happened.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that strikes me the most about this film, and as we get into it, we'll kind of discuss it more, is just how realistic the sword fighting is in this film. Mm-hmm. It feels like there's no flair and no like bravado when it comes to the actual duels.
No.
It's all business. They're not turning their backs on each other, maybe out of exhaustion, but they're while they're dueling, as particularly with swords, it is some of the most realistic sword fights I've seen. It's incredible.
By the time you get to the third, is incredibly brutal, and
that third one is just like Jesus Christ.
And I think it still holds up as probably some of the best sword fighting ever put on.
Weirdly, I had this conversation literally last week with Luke from the Arts Hall. We were just talking on WhatsApp, and we were talking about sword fights. I can't remember what we watched. We both watched something where, but God, the sword fighting is just awful in this. And we were talking about, like, how often do you see realistic sword fighting? And I said, like, basically any film with Christopher Lee or the Duellists, like the only films that come to mind when it's like realistic sword fighting. Because, of course, they get sword experts in for these films, but it's always done with a cinematic flair, which you don't have here. It's filmed almost like someone just filmed a duel. Like, it's not like, hey, let's pretend sword fight and do things. It's very much like, if someone just had a camera and started filming two people having a genuine duel. That's how it comes off.
And I think the other thing is that in most cases, real sword fights tend to be, quite quick affairs. So basically they pull their swords out, one of them skewers the other, and that's it. There's no, in most cases, it's one swordsman is just that much better than the other, and just does his business. It's not a prolonged ting 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 ting.
No, absolutely not.
Highlander.
It's usually
sword fight.
Particularly back then, stuck with a sword and then horrible death a few weeks later, probably.
Yeah, and
from some kind of hideous infection.
Exactly, yeah. And of course, it was all the choreography was William Hobbs,
right?
Who I think had done everything from the Avengers. That's the English one. That terrible movie, and Willow, Flash Gordon. He'd done an awful lot of really cool. I think he even worked on one of the indie movies, maybe.
Oh, quite possibly.
But yeah, a really great swordsman, and he's actually in this movie. I think he's just basically listed as swordsman.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have character names.
Yes, yeah. It very much focuses on two people and a couple of people around them.
Yeah.
But let's get into it, shall we?
Well, I can tell you exactly when I first watched this movie.
Oh, go on. I normally ask that question. I didn't ask. Go for it.
It was the 21st of July, 1991.
How the fuck do you know so specifically that day?
Because I looked it up, and that was I saw it on Moviedrome.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So you actually managed to get... You could even tell me the time.
Yes. Well, funnily enough, I watched the... I don't know the specific time it was on, but I watched the intros on... the Alex Cox intro is on YouTube.
Oh, is it?
And
nice.
I can tell you that it was late because of... I think it was the tennis or something, or the golf. I think it might be the golf.
Right.
So I can tell you that. And it was on a double bill with Cape Fear.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't remember. I couldn't remember that bit, but apparently it was on a double bill with Cape Fear, which I presume was the remake one with Robert De Niro.
Yes,
I don't think it was the original.
Do you know, I was thinking about watching that. That is on Netflix at the moment, that remake, and it's been ages since I've seen it. I've been tempted to watch that.
Yeah, I haven't seen the original. Sorry, not the original. I've seen the original relatively recently, not the remake. But yeah, so and again, another movie that I first saw on Moviedrome. And I still wish they had Moviedrome, because it was such a great program, and it brought my attention to so many movies.
Yeah, yeah. I used to love those sort of late night movie shows that you used to be able to watch. They used to be fantastic. Kind of defined our childhood back then, because that was kind of, back in the day, you could only rent one movie every couple of weeks if you were lucky, really, depending on how your parents are feeling. And those kind of shows, so much easier now you've got streaming, but in a way I kind of miss that, like, less choice.
I do.
Do.
It's I mean how long would you spend in a video shop?
Forever. And I wish I could now. I really do. I prefer that. I prefer that, and I prefer that idea, like, I've got it now, I've got to watch it, because there are so many films that I if I looked in my Netflix or on my Amazon Prime, there are so many films that I've started and got about 15 minutes in and I'm like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, with the video store, you're kind of forced, you're like, well, I've rented it now, I'm going to watch it. And then sometimes you find, actually, these films are great if you give them a chance. But now we're just kind of spoilt for choice, and you end up just skipping between things. That's
true. And I think,
or I do, anyway.
There are things on my list that I've had for, like, years, and I haven't got around to watching them.
Yeah, same.
You sort of sit there and you think, oh, I'm not really in the mood for that right now, and then you postpone it and you postpone it and you postpone it. And I don't think you used to do that with the video shop.
No, you just watched what you had.
Got this, and I'm going to watch it now.
Or you came across a program that was showing films, and you just watched them.
Yeah.
I remember, I remember the Sci-Fi Channel back, when it was good, before it became siffy.
I don't think British Sci-Fi Channel has ever been good.
Oh, there were moments. They used to have some pretty good films early on, but it's been a long time.
These days, they don't even show sci-fi movies.
I haven't watched the Siffy channel since it became Siffy. I was probably still living with my parents the last time I actually watched the Sci-Fi channel, so it's a long time ago now.
The only reason I went to that was because they started having a couple of series that I quite liked. Dark Matter, and there was another one they did which I didn't like so much, so I only watched a couple of episodes. But I really liked Dark Matter. I thought that was quite good.
There was that show they kept plugging for ages that, it was meant to be like the new Blake 7, but it looked bloody awful.
Yeah, that was basically it.
It had Iceman, didn't it? In it? Was that Dark Matter?
Yeah, had who in it?
It had the guy who played Iceman in the X-Men, right?
Oh, Bobby. I always called him Bobby. I never remember that guy's real name. I
don't know his real name.
That was the other series. That was where they were basically bounty hunters.
That's right. It was something like that. I remember they had a massive push on it.
And I think they were linked.
Right.
It was supposed to be linked, but that one I could not get on with. But
no, it looked terrible.
Funnily enough, I think Dark Matter was more like Blake 7. It was basically a bunch of people who woke up on this ship with no memory of who they were.
Okay.
And it was not great, but it had to go. And Will Wheaton turned up as a bad guy.
Nice,
which was quite funny. But I quite enjoyed that series. It was all right. But yeah, you used to sort of like look at the difference between the British Sci-Fi Channel and American Sci-Fi Channel. And you think, Christ, American Sci-Fi Channel is just showing really great movies and really great series. And what do we get?
It's trash. Usually over here it was trash.
I mean, when they first started, they couldn't even get Star Trek because Sky One had it. So they didn't have decent sci-fi series to put out at first.
No, that's very true.
It's a bit of a disaster, I think, in this country.
Yeah. But, had a few movies back in the day.
Yeah.
So, let's get into it. We start in, 1800.
Yes.
In Strasbourg.
1800, yeah.
And it's kind of during a lull in the Napoleonic Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of a brief moment of peace, and we kind of open with this girl basically herding this gaggle of geese down a path.
It's the most pastoral scene you can.
It is, yes.
Basically, just like some sort of great big landscape painting.
Yeah, it's like a fairy tale for like a second.
And
then she comes across two people having a duel.
Yeah, well, I mean, she comes across the most imposing character in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, all he's called Tool Second. He doesn't
even have a name. He is terrifying though. It's like, Jesus.
He's played by Maurice Colburn, who is one of my favourite Doctor Who characters.
Who did he play in Doctor Who?
He was Lytton.
Oh, of course, Lytton. Oh.
One of the best characters that
he had. He's one of the few that had a really good arc.
Yeah, he's in Resurrection of the Daleks and
something of the Cybermen. Yeah, Attack of the Cybermen.
I think it's Attack of the Cybermen.
The most gory Doctor Who serial I've ever watched.
Yeah, it doesn't end well for Lytton.
No, it does not end well for Lytton. No. It's a great. Oh God, we could talk about good Doctor Who for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so she comes across these two dueling, and we're introduced to Farad. Farrow. Played by Harvey Keitel, who is, Harvey Keitel plays unhinged very well.
He really does.
He really does. And
I'm not a massive fan of Harvey Keitel.
I am in the right role.
He's one of those actors that he is a great actor, but there's something about him that I don't know. I just can't gel with. But I mean, in things like Reservoir Dogs and Bad Lieutenant, he's bloody amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is, he plays unlikable so well.
He really does. Yeah.
That it's kind of hard to separate it from him, and I think he probably isn't, like that, because I think maybe he's more like, the devil in Little Nicky or something.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, so we've got him and the what turns out to be the mayor of Strasbourg.
Yes, at this point it's just some dude, and of course it doesn't end well for the nephew of the mayor.
You can completely see that the other guy is not a swordsman.
No.
Clearly, and Thoreau's just basically playing with him.
Yeah. And he skewers him kind of through his through his intestines or something, by the looks of it. As you said, we later learn that he is actually the nephew of the mayor of Strasbourg, and is pretty seriously wounded. I mean, he's alive at this point. Whether he's going to survive is probably questionable. So the general...
Yeah, so you get General...
Trilliard?
Trillet?
Yeah, I'm not sure. By the way, I never took French, and I'm not very good at pronouncing French names, so bear with me.
Played by the great Robert Stevens.
Yeah, he's fantastic in this.
And he stalks into this room where who Dubert is.
Dubert, yeah.
And he basically said, "Who knows Thoreau? Does anybody know him? Because he's a complete bastard, and he's skewed the mayor's son."
yeah, like he's yeah, like the mayor. The mayor is fucking furious.
Yeah,
he say like I've been like talking him down for hours, like I'm trying to calm him down.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to find him, and you need to put him under house arrest.
Yeah, he's confined to quarters.
Yeah,
and Dubert basically says, "Yeah, I know him." He says,
he's like, "I know him, but
very well. I know of him." So off he goes. I absolutely adore the uniforms and the
uniforms. The detail. You can tell that Ridley is kind of ironic when you see some of his more recent films, but his attention to detail with historical accuracy here is amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And I love the way over the period of what we have, because it's basically a 16-year period this movie's set in, and I love the way the fashions change, and with the hair and the different styles of uniform as they go on. It's really beautiful. I love that, and I love that at this point they've got those braids.
Yes, yeah.
Those two braids either side. I think I really love the and there's something about. Everybody loves a hussar. They're the dashing hussars. All the women love the hussar, and you can kind of see why they're sort of strutting around with these amazing uniforms on and these huge hats.
Yeah. Now, of course, the Emperor has ruled that there's to be no combat with civilians, which is kind of the reason that the general's coming down so hard on him. Well, obviously that, and the fact that it's the nephew of the mayor.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, dueling is supposed to be illegal, but
which is kind of interesting because like Bonaparte dueled with fucking the whole of Europe. And then he's like, but you can't do that.
The thing is, he didn't want his own.
He didn't want his own guys
officers skewing each other. He wanted them on the field fighting other people, not themselves.
Absolutely. So of course Dubert, says okay, fine, and off he goes. And he ends up at Farrar's private quarters, and he finds out that he's it's some sort of soiree, doesn't he? And he ends up
Madame de Leon's place, isn't it? Who seems to be a famous sort of Strasbourg lady.
Yes,
the officers call on, and I guess she hosts sort of soirees, as it were.
Yes, and Dubert kind of comes into this guy singing incredibly well. Like it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And of course, kind of mid party, I guess, or mid occasion. And he's polite.
Yeah.
To Thoreau, he says, like I'm here because of I've been told because of this. you're under house arrest, and it's Farrow that really is immediately insulted.
Farrow doesn't even understand what the problem is.
No, and Dubert says, I am just a messenger. Surely you understand that. Like, it's nothing to do with me, dude. Like, just doing my job. But he feels insulted and I guess shown up at the party, even though it's really Farrow that makes the scene at the party. Like, if he just shut up and left, no one would have known.
Like, no one would have known. It would have been fine. But that's not the way. That's not the way Farrow is.
No.
And I think so. This is the difference that I think isn't. I'm not sure whether it's clearly stated in the movie, really, but the difference is that, before the revolution and stuff, only the very wealthy could be officers.
Yes.
And when Napoleon came into power, he basically made it so that if you were good enough, anybody could be an officer.
Yes.
So the difference here is that Dubert's an aristocrat, he comes from aristocratic stuff, but Farrow doesn't. Farrow is, excuse me.
That's gonna come at the worst time, and you know it. There we go.
Farrow is not. Farrow is working class, and I think Farrow is very conscious of that. He's conscious of that, and he's a fervent Bonapartist. To any insult to the emperor is a personal insult to him, and that he gets that real sort of fighting about, and he says, the guy from Strasbourg, the mayor's nephew, he insulted the uniform, and Dubert's like, I don't understand what that means. I don't know why.
Yeah,
that's probably. He says, well, would you let him spit on the uniform? And he doesn't really answer. And he says, would you let him spit on Bonaparte? And of course, he's like, what the hell's Bonaparte got?
Yeah, what are you talking about, buddy? Like,
that's enough for Farrow. He doesn't answer Farrow adequately in his eyes. So, they go back to Farrow's apartments, and Farrow challenges him.
Yeah, he challenges him to the point he won't even let him leave his quarters. No. He's like, you're not leaving until we have this duel.
And so what are you going to do? You're going to climb out of the window.
Yeah.
And you can see that...
He thinks about it.
I love that Karen's face in this. He's so good at just having this constant expression of, what the fuck is going on?
He literally
the absurdity of his situation.
It's not until I want to say it's not until about 3/4 of the way through this film where he's finally had enough, and he's like, fuck this guy. Like, for most of the movie, he is like, for God's sake, this is a farce. I mean, he even says even in the end, he's still like, this is an absolute farce. But yeah, and he, Dubert says, like, I don't even have a second. Yeah. So Farrow just walks outside and grabs this old geezer. He's like, right, you're in the second.
Poor old dude just been grabbed by this fucking hussar. He's like, practically crapping his pants. He's like, you just stand there. It's like,
okay, sure. And of course, they have at it with their first duel. And Dubert injures Farrow. Sorry, he injures his forearm, doesn't he?
He catches him across the forearm. Yeah.
But more importantly, it's his pride that's wounded here. I think.
Completely, I think it is.
Especially because he's saved by like his wife, isn't he? Or partner.
I'm not. I think it's his girlfriend.
Girlfriend,
lady friend. But yes, because she jumps on poor Dubert.
And scratches his face up. Yeah, he actually looks like a real mess.
I love. They got some amazing transitions in this. It's a great one here where you go into the house, and you've got this sort of. It almost looks like a sort of a tent. It's obviously sort of physicians' quarters.
Yeah,
and you've got Tom Conti playing.
He's a surgeon, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's there sort of like idly led on his bed playing the flute. And not even sort of at this point very tunefully. He's just sort of blowing the odd notes. Yeah. And that's another thing as well we should point out. I think the soundtrack on this is amazing.
It's perfect for this film.
So beautiful and really haunting.
It is, yeah.
and the way it's used at times is like it really emphasizes the sort of, you know, in some places the misery of this movie.
Yeah,
and I think it's a shame that Tom Conti's character isn't in it enough.
He's quite a funny character. He's
brilliant, isn't he? He comes in, and I like the he sort of
he brings a little levity to an otherwise very sort of dour kind of movie in places.
Yeah, Dubert comes in with his scratched face. He says, "Oh, you've been fighting with a woman."
Yeah.
He says, "Yes." And he says to him, "You know, I've just been fighting a duel with Farrow." And he says, "He fought a duel this morning." He's like, "Yes, I know."
Yeah, like this is the reason I am in this mess.
Yeah.
I mean, he says, you know, just, you know, you should keep away from Farrow.
Yeah.
And you need to stay ahead of Farrow in military rank, because you can only duel between soldiers of equal rank.
Yeah,
that's as I understand it.
Yeah, he says basically the way to avoid him is to distance is the first way to avoid him. You can't fight if you're not in the same place. At the same time. And
doesn't he also suggest that, well, just basically just keep the Napoleonic War going, because as long as there's war, you're not allowed to duel.
Yeah, as long as they're at war, they're not allowed to duel. Which I think is hilarious. And I love it. He's got this line. Where is it? He says about he says, "Oh yes," he says, I have scented, I have anatomized the military man, and I have literally picked through his brains, and it is the fate of my life to put them back together again, and I have no idea how they work." And what's great is Dubert pays him to go and make a call on Farrow to fix him up.
Yes, but and that continues. There is respect from Dubert to Farrow the whole way through this film.
Yeah,
particularly at the end. I mean, like, you know, there's well, we'll get to it. I mean, he's on the chopping block at the end, and it's Dubert that gets him off of it.
Yeah.
But we then skip ahead 1 year later, I think, in Augsburg.
Yes.
And Lieutenant Dubert and meets an old girl, a girlfriend of his called Laura.
Yeah, and we get this again. We get that great shot of the sort of like the little sort of street.
Yes.
And there's a car sort of pulling up, and it's Farrow's second is actually going to seek him out because you see this Farrow's you get this scene where Farrow is arm wrestling.
Yes.
And he complains that his arm hasn't healed right.
Yeah.
And he basically says, you know, it was Dubert's fault, and I should you know, fight him again, you know, to make him pay for you know, injuring my pride and hurting my arm.
Yeah.
So the tall second basically goes out looking for him again, and then you know, he's literally just about to sort of confront Dubert when Laura turns up, and you get that amazing close up of her face. And I mean, the camera almost, you know, makes love to her as it sort of zooms into her, and you see her bright eyes and how happy she is to see, you know, Dubert.
Yeah, yeah, and of course she informs him that she's had an offer of marriage.
Yes.
But
it's clear that she loves him.
She loves him, yeah, and they're going to continue their relationship regardless.
Yeah.
But yes, as you said, Farrow is in the same town. And sends his second to seek out Dubert, and eventually, they're going to duel again. There's no sort of I love the way this film is. Dubert is hopeless. Like he just knows throughout this movie. He's like, I've got no way out of this. Like, we're just going to fight again. There's no, you know.
He's completely trapped by his own honor.
Yeah.
And I even to the point where later on, where one of the, I can't remember which character it says about. Oh, I think it's the general again says to him, you know, what actually is this quarrel about? And he says, you know, I can't. And he says to him,
I can't say
very well fight 3 duels with the man and then tell tales about him. You know, I can't just tell you. You know, it's not for me to say. You should ask.
And I think all of that goes back to his upbringing and his societal status. Like he's been brought up. You know, he's been brought up in money. He's been brought up well-to-do, and he is. You know, he has those kind of.
Not to say that all noble people would do the same thing as.
No, absolutely not. But
it's basically just that he was brought up like that, and he believes in honor.
In honor,
and he's actually a very good man. It's you know, it's kind of his own fault that these things happen to him because he's a good man. You know.
But good man or not, their second duel does not go so well for Dubert.
And again, it's a beautiful setup shot.
It's great, yeah.
You have the right back, and you have a
couple of sheep.
You have Dubert practicing with with his, which I think it must be his second.
I assume it's his second, yeah.
And then it's a big wide shot, and you can just in the distance you can see Farrow and his men coming up the road on their horses, and they come right into the foreground. You know, right in front of you and get off their horses, and you see them walking towards. You know, it's a really great shot. It's again, I mean, it's Ridley Scott. It's kind of what he's known for.
That's what I mean. You see it even in this first film. You see that direction, and that sense of it gives such a sense of scale to an otherwise reasonably low budget movie. I would assume. I could be completely wrong. Maybe this.
No, I think it is. It was a relatively low budget. And I think
it feels like when you watch it, it feels like. They're doing a lot with the budget
because you never see They certainly. I think he probably would have liked to have had at least one battle scene.
Yeah, I mean the closest you get is in the snow, isn't it? You kind of see some things, but you never see a battle.
Yeah, I mean that's the retreat.
It's a couple of Cossacks, isn't it? That's about it.
So that's, but yeah, so they couldn't afford that much. So it was a relatively low budget, and he based most of how he shot it on Kubrick's Barry Lyndon.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen Barry Lyndon.
I have not. No.
It's a really great movie, and it's in the same sort of vein as this. It's basically about the history of this guy who goes through the Napoleonic Wars and becomes. You know, a lord and all this sort of stuff, and it's a really, really great film, and it's one of those ones that was filmed with it's Kubrick, so it's Kubrick's attention to detail was amazing as well.
Absolutely.
So he wanted it to look kind of like that, and I think for the most part he really succeeded on a much lower budget than Kubrick, of course, certainly.
And again, I know you mentioned at the start of this episode that. You know, sword fights generally don't go on very long, and we see here it does not last very long.
So they've got this. They use sabers in the first one.
Yeah.
This is small swords,
which is almost worse, to be honest.
Well, I love the Dubert has a cold.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
He's just about to start, and he stops. To sneeze. And you can see, Farrow really impatient.
He's frustrated, but he's not going to break etiquette or attack the man. He is going to wait, but he does. Yeah, he looks very annoyed about it.
And in a very short couple of blade exchanges, and for Farrow again, skewers him straight through.
Yeah. And Dubert is gravely wounded. He takes a couple of steps and collapses onto he's on his back, and people are helping him. One of the seconds says, well, the honor of both parties is saved. There's no shame in this. It's over.
Yeah.
But neither of them are going to be having any of that.
No.
And there's no chance of reconciliation between these two.
And again, it's his second's Alan Armstrong, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who, cause, again, this has got some great character actors, amazing characters. Cause
it really does.
You later on, you've got Albert Finney and Diana Quick, who plays Laura, is another great actress.
Yeah.
And I love, Farrow's furious that he won't get up. It's like, oh, it's like,
it's like, dude, you've stabbed him.
In a Monty Python sort of way, he goes, it's almost like, oh, well, it's just a flesh wound. Why can't he get up?
I mean, he doesn't, like, he just wants him to stand up, and it's interesting because we transition to some time later, with Laura nursing Dubert, or trying to nurse Dubert back to health, and she says to him, like, why didn't you try and just apologize and just make up, shake hands? And he said, I couldn't get up, and even if I did, he would have just started the duel again. Like, it wouldn't have, him getting up to try and shake hands would have just ended in the duel continuing.
And he says, I wasn't well.
Yeah.
I've got like a cold, I'm not a well man at the moment either. So not only has he been skewered, he's also got a cold as well. And I love he's got a sneeze coming.
I know, and you can just feel that pain. I can see that pain. You're like, oh my god, I could just imagine how much that would hurt.
We've been there when we've had some injury, and and a sneeze comes along, and it's like you're desperately trying not to.
Just
and
imagine
she says, describe honor, and he's like, honor is indescribable.
It's indescribable. Yeah.
It means everything, and a chew, and that's it.
yeah. And I mean, he makes it back from this, which is lucky, really, because I think a lot of people die from that kind of wound. Certainly back then, because they often ended up with bits of cloth just stuck in their bodies from.
Usually it wasn't the injury that killed.
No, it's usually an infection that kills them, isn't it?
Would finish them off.
Because I think they end up with parts of their shirt and God knows what. Shoved in their body.
Funnily enough, it reminds me of another movie set in the same time, which is Master and Commander.
I love that film.
Which it kills me that movie never did well enough.
That film deserves so much more credit.
There was a franchise that deserved to be made because the books are great.
I distinctly remember leaving the cinema with my dad and just us both being like, I cannot wait for them to do more of these. Like, this was brilliant.
Completely. I was completely on. And you get that thing where the Marine, the captain of Marines, shoots the doctor.
Yeah. And again, yes, absolutely.
And the guy he's basically like, I think is he the cook? He has to do the surgery, and he says, there's a bit of his shirt missing. If we don't find it, if we don't get out, it'll separate in his body and fester, and that'll be it. He'll be dead.
Yeah.
So you get that that scene of surgery, and it's that same sort of thing. It wasn't necessarily the injury that killed you. It was the infection afterwards.
Yeah. So yeah, Laura nurses Dubert back to health, and meets with Ferreau, and later even speaks to a fortune teller.
Yeah, well, I love that when there's that. It's a brilliant scene when she goes to see him, because Ferreau's there celebrating with his men, and there's lots of ladies there, and she comes in all sort of swathed up, and you can't see her properly because she's got all this cloak on and stuff, and she comes in and she says, which one of you is Ferreau? And she said, and of course somebody else he says it's him there, sort of thing. And she says that she's Dubert's woman, and he pulls a sword out and he says, I once knew a man who was surprised by a woman who stabbed. He got the surprise of his life when she stabbed him to death, and she says, I once knew a woman who was beaten to death by a soldier. It didn't surprise her
at all. Yeah.
And you see the difference in in these people's lives, how different it is for one person than it is to the other, and they don't. She says to him, "No one even knows why you fight."
Yeah.
It's there are rumors, but no one is, and he basically spits at her and laughs at her and says, you should be here with me, and you should be with a proper soldier's woman, and she sort of leaves really completely unsatisfied with
and then she sees a fortune teller who basically tells her this is going to go on until one of them's dead. That's the only way this is ending.
We get before she goes to see the fortune teller, that we have there's like Dubert's mostly recovered, hasn't he? And he's having tea with her and Lecobi. I have no idea how you pronounce that. Alan Armstrong's character. Let's call him Alan.
Yeah.
And Alan Armstrong he's kind of making light of, he's a notorious duelist now.
Yeah, he's like, one more duel and you'll have made it.
Exactly.
All the ladies will be all over you. Yeah.
Everybody talks about you. They said, I love the way she says to him there, narrow your eyes at me, and he narrows his eyes. And it's a great little moment. But you can see in the distance the tall second.
Yeah, he's out the window looking for them. Yeah.
Yeah, already coming for him. And it's like, well, you can't fucking avoid it. And of course, he says this is it. And so again, you get another you're going to get another duel, and Laura goes to find him, and he's at a sword master's house. He's training.
Yes. Yeah.
He's getting lessons from this swords master, and of course the swords master says he's not here, go away, sort of thing. So of course, again, she's pushed out. She's completely sidelined by all these events that are going on with, that she has no control over.
And so she decides she's going to marry the ex-soldier.
She says, I got this ring from this. I think he was a artilleryman, I think, that lost his arm.
Yes.
And he works in some sort of factory or something, I think. Munitions factory, that's it. She says
yes.
He now works in a munitions factory, and he's already, said that he wants to marry me. And you can tell that he really does care, but again, I think he feels like it's out of his hands.
Yeah, he knows this is going to continue. Like there's nothing he can do about it.
He thinks, well, maybe she would be better off, happy with someone who's away from the war, away from all this.
Yeah,
and he doesn't really say. I think what she wants him to do is say, stay, no, don't go.
Yeah.
Marry me instead, but he doesn't say that. And that's when she goes to the fortune teller, and the fortune teller says, you have to make a choice.
This is going to only end with one of them dead.
I think it's like the Three of Swords, about the strife with no reason.
Yeah.
And the moon, so it's a lonely path that you have to take, and it's between two dogs, literally. Card, you have to take the path between these two dogs. And she says, who will win? And she says, well, I can't say that. It's for you to decide.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she goes back, and she writes on Duber's sword,
goodbye, doesn't she?
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, she writes goodbye with sort of lipstick.
Yeah.
I don't think they call it lipstick, it's lip balm, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So then we have what I think is probably the kind of defining duel of this movie. It's horrendous.
Yeah, and you come in and it's already
it's near the end. I mean, they're exhausted. I mean, I don't know how long this has been going on, but
they're fighting with heavy sabers in this one.
Yeah, they're both like they're stumbling, falling about.
Both of them have cuts to numerous cuts all over their arms.
Body. And we get this horrendous injury to Dubert. The shoulder is just flapping around as he's
of his shoulder out. Yeah, and in this scene, the swords were wired to batteries.
Oh, really?
That's how they got the sparks.
I did wonder because he sparks on the wall a couple of times, doesn't he? Yeah.
So whenever the swords hit, they sparked, and that was because of the batteries. And I think they both got shocked on numerous occasions.
I wouldn't be surprised.
And also, if you look very carefully on the walls, you can see that they've put a thin wire mesh.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's interesting.
So when they
hit it, it would
you get those big sparks, and
I genuinely didn't see that.
Yeah, if you look very carefully, you can just notice the wires.
Ah. But yeah, so they both fight. It's basically inconclusive because they're just so exhausted that eventually everyone just comes in and is like, "Come on, guys!" Like,
yeah, they have to be separated because they've just basically collapsed on each other.
They basically do. Yeah,
from many wounds. And again, I love the way it's shot. It's shot in this sort of cellar, this sort of stone cellar, and you know you get the cameras on them as all their seconds come in to to part them, and the camera moves away and it moves up along the wall to these two people, and you get this what I presume is a father and son maybe, and the father you hear the child saying, "Are they dead? Is it are they dead?" And then of course it moves on, and but again it's a really great little tracking shot.
It really is, yeah.
Little thing.
So we then move forward again, 1806, and now Captain De Beer realizes that Farrow is kind of in the same room as him, but he's like, "What rank is Farrow?"
Yeah,
and his friend tells him, he's captain. He's, "Oh, fuck's sake, like we're still the same rank," because obviously De Beer's moved up, so he was kind of hoping like, "Hey, if I've moved up,
But no, I think he's there to celebrate the fact that he's just been made major.
Yeah, but that doesn't take effect for 2 weeks or something, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. It's been made major, but it's not it won't be in effect for either weeks or a matter of days. Whatever it is, it's not bloody soon enough.
No, because of course Farrow's in the same room as him, and De Beer tries to make he tries to exit quietly, doesn't he?
He says to his friend, "I need to to ask you on a point of honor. If can I get away with slipping out the back and not seeing him, or And first of all, his friend said, you should, maybe you should just go, say, "Yeah, look, I'm here." He says, but then he says, it's a matter of honor. And he says, look, he says, "I'll see you soon, Major," sort of thing. And he shakes his hand, and he turns away, and he almost gets to the stairwell, and some guy says,
some drunk dude's like, "Hey, I know you."
Yeah, he says, "Don't I know you?" He's like, no. He says, "You might, he's like." He says, "It's you're Du Beer," and of course that's it. Everybody fucking hears the word Du Beer.
Farrow looks around like fuming, immediately. That fury in his eyes.
And I love the way that Du Beer looks at him. And he looks him up and down, and he points to his lapel and says, "We're the same rank."
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah, and of course, Du Beer can't be like, "Yeah, we'll have this fight in 2 weeks' time." So he's like, obviously we have to do this time on horseback.
Yeah.
And Du Beer is not keen on this idea. He's like, "I'm just gonna die. I'm gonna die." Like,
and Alan Armstrong's character, says to him, he's agreed to fight the duel on horseback, and he says the company expects it.
Yeah, the garrison's behind you. This has to happen.
It's like the blood, damn the bloody company. What the hell has it got to do with them? Why? Because you've made you've got a reputation now. Your unit basically wants you to do this because the whole honor of the bloody unit's on the line now. Is it because of you? You've got to the point now where you just can't walk away from it, even if you bloody well wanted to. Even if there was a legitimate way of getting out of it, I don't think you could. You know what I mean?
No, and this is the turning point. I think where Du Beer has finally he's had enough now, and we get this is probably my favorite scene of the film, where we get this. The horseback riding, they're riding at each other with swords drawn, and it cuts to different.
You get a great setup with this as well. You get them coming. You get that wide setup, and you see them all the other soldiers having bloody breakfast.
Yeah,
and it's like almost like a bloody grand day out for them.
Yeah, breakfast and a show. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
But I love this shot where they're charging at each other, and we keep cutting with Du Beer remembering the times they've met before and how much of an asshole Farrow is.
You can see how scared he is.
Yeah.
He's not scared enough to not do it, but you can see that he really doesn't want to fucking do this. It's got to the point now where this is complete madness.
Yeah,
because he's not just fighting him in a room. Now he's charging at him at full fucking gallop on horseback.
Yeah. I mean, one of them will most likely die from this. And I think the first time I watched it, I was like, shit, he cut his head off. Like, he's fucking dead. Because you see the hat, don't you?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's quite a large hat, so it almost looks like it could just be his head. And we see that he's wounded Thoreau. He's cut him across the forehead, and it's severe enough that he can't see.
Again, it's like a flap of. It's another flap of skin, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and the blood is just gushing into his eyes. So basically, it's
and
like
I like the way the second says. He's received a slight head cut.
Slight is like profusely bleeding.
Yeah. That's just pouring out of him.
Rivers of blood.
Yeah, he's just like, no way they can clear it for him to see. So that's it. He can't continue.
Yeah,
and I love in the same sort of thing is he gets to go to his his unit moved on. They're now separate. I think Thoreau's being sent to Spain, and I think he's being kept in sort of Northern Europe. But he get that sort of elated scene of him galloping up the road and seeing that there's a hay cart sort of blocking the path, and he's so elated he jumps
it. Yeah.
So happy to be a bloody alive that he does this. And I think also what we forgot to say was after the first duel, the general is absolutely furious with Dubert.
Oh, he is. Yes, sorry, we did miss that. Yeah,
calls him basically an idiot.
Yeah,
he says because at that point he was sequestered to the general's company. He was not with his unit. He was one of his men. He was doing things for the general. And the general basically says, I've got no bloody use for you. You're an idiot. Fuck off back to your unit.
Yeah.
So, he kind of lost face.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So he's kind of gained it a little here.
Yes.
But Laura,
when he gets his, because again we forgot the scene where he goes back to the general again after the wound after the fight in the cellar. He's all banged up, and that's when he gets his promotion.
Yes, yeah. But Laura reappears, and she's now a widow, and tries to kind of, I guess she just wants to continue things with Dubert, but Dubert is just obsessed with the duel. I mean, it's not gonna stop. So her kind of suggestion of an affair goes nowhere, basically, at this point.
And she says he asks about her husband, and he said, did you marry him? And he says yes. And he says he died of typhus.
Yeah.
And on his deathbed he said, well, go to Dubert, he'll take you back.
But Dubert just says, like, why don't you just go back to France? Just go away.
You can see the hope in her eyes.
Oh yeah.
When she says, you look at Dubert and I think for a second you think maybe he will say something, but he doesn't.
Yeah, but he doesn't. No.
And then this time she says, I hope he kills you.
Yeah. And then, of course, we go to probably the most harrowing scene of the film. We cut to Russia in 1812.
Yeah,
and
the march back from Moscow.
Yeah, they've been defeated by the winter and the Russians' kind of tactics.
Yeah,
and they're in retreat. And God, the frostbite and it's hideous. This scene, you really see like how awful this kind of warfare would have been on a human. Their faces are scarred, their fingers are just like hideously,
like practically falling off.
Yeah, just awful. And of course, at a fireplace, or at a fire, an outdoor fire, Dubert sees Thoreau, and then in no time at all, Thoreau sees Dubert.
Yeah.
And
they don't say anything. They just sit there. They
don't need to at this point. No. They really don't need to. And of course,
the next morning, Thoreau gets up and he says,
that forest is full of Cossacks.
Yeah, it stinks of Cossacks.
Yeah.
I want volunteers. And they're all like, they're fucked.
Yeah, they're like, fuck
Most
that.
of them probably haven't eaten for days, and they're like, fuck that shit. We just want to go home.
But of course, Thoreau wasn't after them. And
no.
I think he pretty much assumed there was only going to be one person.
Yeah, of course, Dubert says, I volunteer, and Dubert gets up.
Yeah.
They basically move in with two pistols drawn,
and they face off with two pairs of pistols, but of course they are attacked by a group of Cossacks.
Yeah, well, they're not even attacked. I have no idea because I don't speak Russian, but I have no idea what it is. It sounds like the Cossacks taking the piss out of him because he's eating, isn't he?
Yeah.
And like he's spitting food at them. And basically Fro just shoots him.
Yeah, and they take him out, and Dubert says, pistols next time.
Pistols next time.
Yeah. And they kind of walk away. And
he tries to be Dubert tries to be cordial. He takes a flask out.
Yeah, he offers him schnapps, doesn't he? He's like, and
I think we should sort of celebrate. We should, being alive. I think really.
Yeah.
And Dubert is like he finished us. He slits that Cossack's throat to finish him off. He steals the food he has, and he basically just walks away from him.
Yeah. We then cut to 1814 with Napoleon in exile.
Mm-hmm.
And now General Dubert.
Yeah. He's basically living with his sister, isn't he?
Yes, and he's obviously sustained an injury from the French campaign. And yes.
And he sort of resigned himself to become a sort of like a gentleman sort of farmer almost.
Yeah, he looks the part as well.
He's fine. He doesn't want to do any of these sorts of things. And
he's seen a lot of action by this point. To be fair, he's probably sick of of war and just like, I'm just gonna just live my life on the farm.
His sister's just like completely sort of, oh no, I've got plans for you.
Yeah, she's like, you should get married, sir.
Yeah. There's a sweet girl across the way.
Yeah, it's the niece of their neighbor, isn't it? Adele. Is it Adele? Yeah.
And she's she's really sweet and it's a good family.
Yeah, they're aristocrats, aren't they? They're from yeah.
And he sort of goes to pay a call to the old guy who's making shoes.
Yeah, and he offers to make him shoes.
Yeah, and of course the Adele walks by and he's sort of nonchalantly trying to sort of get a look at. It's like, just sort of stretches like
maybe
tries to get a glance at,
at
her. And you do get these sort of like scenes, a couple of scenes where he's getting to know her and they're sort of playing with sort of children and things, and it always looks like it's going really well. And of course the lady who's playing Adele, Krista Raines, she was actually Caradine's real girlfriend at the time.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
And yeah, they'd previously been in Nashville, the filming days in Nashville before this.
Oh, okay.
And I think basically that when they were looking for someone to play the character, he basically said, well, my girlfriend's here.
Yeah, she's on set anyway.
Her. Yeah, so they cast her, and you get that scene. You get this he's talking to his sister, and his sister sort of saying about she's playing solitaire and cheating. And I love the way he's like, "Go and play billiards, stop bothering me," sort of thing. And he confesses that he loves her. So you get the scene where he's about to propose her, and they've got their horses. And that in that scene, the horse apparently had a huge erection, which is why she's laughing.
Is that why? I did not know that. That's brilliant.
She's giggling because the horse is completely horny, and of course it's this Caradine's struggling with the reins because this horse.
Yeah, because the horse, you can see the horse is definitely agitated about something.
Yeah. He was very agitated.
It comes across quite natural though between the two of them in that scene. It actually works really well.
It makes the scene that much better.
It does.
It's almost like it's a nervous giggle at him, It's and how happy she is to because he thinks he's too old for her, and he thinks it's ludicrous that this poor young girl gets lumbered with this old soldier, of course she loves him as well, and you know, he proposes and she accepts.
Yeah. And then De Beer is visited by, I don't know, Edward Fox. I'm not sure who he is. He's a dude.
Yeah, he's a general from, because Napoleon has come back.
Yes, and he basically wants to recruit him to help the return of the Emperor. Mm-hmm. But De Beer refuses and discovers that this general is friends with Ferrot.
Yeah.
And of course, he says, Ferrot's told me about you, and he says you dislike the Emperor, you don't believe in the Emperor, and he sort of says that, basically refutes that and says that's absolute nonsense. And he says, when you go back, when you see him next, you bring up what's her name,
a lady from
the where they first met, basically.
Yeah, Lady de Leon, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he sort of like looks at him nonplussed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he goes back to Ferrot, who they're obviously making plans for Napoleon, and he says about he's not going to cut that De Beer's not going to come, and he mentions the lady, and he's completely confused.
Can't even remember,
because that's the thing with Ferrot is he
wanted an excuse,
he's locked this idea in his mind that he was disrespectful to the Emperor, he was disrespectful to him, and that's what that was the excuse he needed. He's because he kind of lives for these jewels, he lives for the danger, and he's built this up in his head, and he almost believes that he's a traitor.
I think he probably does believe it himself now. He's told this lie to himself so many times that he genuinely believes that that's the case.
Yeah, he's literally spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and now it's this big thing that he's just a horrible monster who hates Napoleon.
Yeah.
I say he never loved the Emperor. I say he's always been like that. He's always been a traitor.
Yeah. But of course, we then skip forward probably 100. I think it's like 100 days later. I think it says. Yeah. And of course, the Emperor's been defeated at Waterloo.
Yep.
And a lot of the Bonapartists have been arrested, including Ferrot.
Yeah.
Now I think we get the wedding here, don't we? We get the end of De Beer's wedding.
De Beer's now been made. I think is he Brigadier General now? I think
something and like that. Yeah,
he's been appointed general of the troops for the reinstated king.
Yes, yeah, so, yeah. He's on the right side now of history, anyway. Yeah, so he hears that Ferrot is on the list of people to be executed, and he meets with the police minister.
Yeah,
and basically says, well, first of all, he requests that Ferrot be pardoned, and he's got witnesses. He's got like character witnesses and whatnot, hasn't he?
Two generals behind him.
Yeah. So it's not a small ask. He's gone to a lot of effort to get him off of this, but he also says, he says like, I want you to intervene on Ferrot's behalf, but I also want it to be kept secret. I don't want Ferrot to know that I was the one that got him out. And then sometime later,
Fouché is Fouché's one of until he wasn't. Fouché was one of history's survivors, because he even says to him about how he things have changed, because Fouché was he worked with Robespierre during the terror, and he changed sides on a number of occasions. He completely was a survivor until he wasn't,
until it caught up with him. Yeah,
but he's a really interesting character, and he's in this movie, and it's a very minor point.
Yeah,
but he gets he he gets him to cross the thing off. He says, I can't do it for you. You've got to do it yourself.
He's like, so you have to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says to him, even if he does get crossed off, he's going to be he'll be watched for the rest of his life.
Yeah, they're waiting for him to fuck up. He'll never be allowed
to leave, the province that he's going to go to. That'll be it for him.
But of course, Thoreau discovers De Bere's whereabouts in no time, and sends two companions in arms to basically set up their final duel.
When they were in the snow in Moscow, we also see the tall second.
Yes.
Completely frozen.
Oh, that's horrendous, that scene as well. Yeah, he kind of just we get De Bere just like kind of staring at him in shock, and he's just kind of sat there completely frozen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they set up another duel. Thoreau, sends some companions in arms to kind of set up this duel again.
Yeah.
And they meet.
They say they had to sneak in because they're obviously watched.
Yes, yeah. They've snuck into
where they are.
De Bere's property, which is where they're going to have this. And I love that one of the seconds, presumably Thoreau, who's going to act as Thoreau's second, says like, this isn't a suitable place to have this duel, and De Bere's like, we're going to kill each other. Anywhere is fine. Like, it's just like,
he says pistols,
Yeah, pistols, and he suggests that they go up to like some castle ruins, doesn't he? So we're opposite ends, and
he says, "I need the names of your friends," and he says, "What for?" He says, "Well, to act as your seconds." He says, "I don't have any friends stupid enough to be involved in this."
Yeah, because again, he's still saying this is an absolute farce. Like I don't know anyone stupid enough to join me in this. But yes, so what follows is probably quite short in description, but we get some amazing shots in this duel. The tension. So obviously the pistols they're using are one-shot pistols. They've got two pistols each, 2 shots. And we get a lot of them just stalking each other around these ruins.
Just missing each other.
I love the shot of Thoreau walking across the bridge in the background with De Bere in the foreground, and they just miss each other.
Yeah, it's great.
Wonderful shot. And of course the shot when when we get to the kind of finale of this duel where we see De Bere and we're following De Bere around this wall, and he pauses for a moment, and the camera kind of pulls back, and you see Thoreau is just waiting down in this kind of gully, isn't he? Just down the kind of or gully, or this kind of decline, they have at it. So De Bere kind of moves out, not realizing that Thoreau's there. Thoreau fires his first shot, and De Bere falls to the ground.
Yeah, it looks like
he's taken him out. And of course he kind of Thoreau cautiously approaches De Bere kind of underneath him. He's kind of walking up on him, and
you see his boot, and it looks like his foot sort of twitching.
Yeah, like he's twitching, like he's dead. And Thoreau, carefully pointing his pistol, makes his way up, and finally shoots at De Bere, but De Bere dodges and shoots back. De Bere also misses.
Yes.
But of course, De Bere is now the only person with a bullet in their gun.
Yeah.
And he's basically gotten dead to rights at this point. Yeah. He's pointing a gun straight at his face.
And you don't know what happened.
No, at this point it cuts away. Yeah.
It cuts away. And
we get some wonderful landscape shots.
Yes. And you go to he's gone back to the house, sort of thing, and because he sort of sneaked out, didn't he? He didn't tell his wife where he was going.
No, she's like, I've been worried about you, and he's like, I was working late, and then I went for a walk.
Yeah,
nothing to worry about.
And he doesn't show her the pistols. He pretends
he hides them.
Just got oranges in his bag, sort of thing, which he gives to her.
Yeah,
of course she's pregnant at this point as well.
Yes, yeah.
Which we've seen in another little sort of scene where he's kicking.
Yeah.
The baby's kicking, and he says he's a soldier, and he says, "No, it's very ladylike, I assure you." I think that's a lovely, sweet little moment.
And then we cut to a wonderful shot of Thoreau from the back, and it kind of looks a lot like Napoleon's kind of portrait, the way he's standing and what he's wearing.
It's pretty much exactly a painting. I forget what the bloody painting's called now, but it's pretty much the exact sort of almost copy of this painting of Napoleon in exile.
Yeah, which of course is Thoreau. Thoreau is in exile, and of course we find out what actually happened. That Dubert actually shot into the ground, and basically said, I shall simply declare you dead. And he says to him that, I have spent like the better part of my life now.
Yeah. The last
showing you honor, and now you're going to show me honor. You're going to do the same for me. You're defeated.
Yeah.
He's kind of like just meditating on his life, I guess, isn't he, at this point?
Well,
just looking out and
what has he got left? He's completely defeated.
He's lost everything. He's lost everything.
The only thing he had sort of that was keeping
was
him alive,
the jewel.
I guess, was forgotten faults of these jewels and things.
Yeah,
and that's it. Now he's
even robbed of that. Now
he's robbed of that. There's nothing left.
No, but it's a wonderful shot to end on, and like I said, it's been a long time since I watched this film, and fell back in love with it rewatching it. It was great.
Yeah,
really is a fantastic film, and a remarkable film for a first outing.
Yeah,
it really is.
And I don't think enough people have seen it. I think it's one of those sort of Scott films that has kind of fallen away.
It has a little, hasn't it?
Because I think I don't think it was a massive hit or anything, and it's one of those. It's a Napoleonic War story, and I don't think there's a big sort of love for those.
I think no, and
it's. I
think it's mostly known for pretty much getting him the gig with Alien, effectively, because I think they. I can't remember who it was, but someone on the production staff had seen the Duellists and was impressed enough that they were like, maybe we should get this guy, to make the movie. But yeah, it was nominated for BAFTAs. I think it won 2. So it was.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a really well made movie. It's and even having sort of slightly weird American accents.
It's acceptable.
I think it works. I think because I think they're both playing their parts really well.
That's it, and I do think often with these things, it becomes a joke, like Connery in The Hunt for Red October and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the reality is that The Hunt for Red October is a much better film for Connery not trying to do a Russian accent or trying to speak Russian, which would be even worse.
I completely agree.
It's a fantastic film, and you just accept that. So fine. It's a westernized telling of this story. Fine, no problem. Doesn't matter. He doesn't need to be speaking Russian or in a Russian accent. And the same here. I think the performances would have been compromised.
Yeah,
to be honest, or somewhat at least.
It's a brilliant study of honor and what people will do for it and how it affects people. For Dubert, it's about really being trapped by it, but not wanting to give up on it either. It's how he lives. It's what he's always lived by, and And for Thoreau uses it in an entirely different thing. It makes him, it's for him, it's his driving force. It's what everything hinges on. Even to the point of lying to himself about what it is he needs to make him work,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think they both do a bloody amazing job at it. I think it's.
I agree.
Some of their finest performance, and they've both done amazing performances.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this movie so much. It's as I said, it's why it's my second favorite Scott movie.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not my second favorite Scott movie, but it's it's a fine film. it would certainly be in a top 5 of Scott movies for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic film, and good. Of course,
an Iron Maiden song as well.
Yes, it was indeed.
Aeroslave.
Yeah. But so that was The Duellists, and highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't already.
Yeah, but, I mean it's worth it just for the sword fights alone. I mean,
it is. I mean, some of the most realistic sword fights I've seen on film. They're fantastic. So yeah, absolutely check it out, and of course we will be back next week with our usual review fare. Find some bloody films to watch.
We've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're happy.
I've already seen that fucking film, so yeah, we can talk about that next week. But I was hoping to find something good as well, you know? We'll even it out a little bit.
There's nothing like giving away your review.
Spoilers for next week. Well, you might love it. Who knows?
I might.
I suspect you will not. But we'll find out next week. But until then, thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.